The case against the man who killed 10 people at a Boulder grocery store is now set to go to the jury tomorrow. The shooter facing 55 separate counts. The judge and the prosecutors and the defense attorneys spent today finalizing the jury instructions.
And Kevin Vaughn from 9 News Investigates is joining us. You have been in court for every single day, and this has been weeks now. So what struck you?
A couple of things struck me. One was the sheer terror of that day as described in hours of dramatic testimony. Officer Pam Gignac was the first officer on the scene, and she talked about what happened in the moments after she and 2 other officers, Brian Capobianco and Eric Talley, rushed into that store.
Capo was ahead of me, and then I was back several feet, and then Eric was behind me. Sorry, Officer Talley.
What's the very next thing that happened?
Officer Talley ran by me on my right shoulder and penetrated further into the store. And then 2 shots rang out and Officer Talley dropped.
Officer Gignac said at the time she hoped that he was ducking to take cover. She later said she knew in her heart of hearts what was reality, which was that he'd been killed.
Yeah, and that testimony, just like hearing from all the people that were in the store that survived, those are stories I don't think any of us will ever forget. I mean,
well, we hadn't heard until this week.
Right,
yeah.
and
last week
during the trial. So what else really kind of stood out for you?
The other thing was this: what happened that day at that store is important, but there's a bigger question for the jury, and that's whether the shooter was insane that day. He's pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. To get a conviction, the prosecution is going to have to convince the jury that he was sane on that day. And the last witness they called yesterday, their rebuttal witness, drove that point home.
The defendant took up a flanking position and took up an ambush position such that when Officer Talley, who was at the top of the stack, when he was exposed, that's when the defendant chose to fire a shot, striking him in the head and killing him.
So this doctor was basically arguing that from his actions, he knew the difference between right and wrong, and he understood the consequences of what he was doing. And those are sort of the 2 prongs of showing that somebody was sane, that they understood right and wrong and acted with intent, knew what they were doing would result in this case in deaths.
I think one of the things that makes this so unique, these last days of testimony, is that we hadn't heard these stories told by many of these officials. And sadly, for many of these families, they hadn't seen what I'm sure is very graphic video of the murders of their family members.
I was sitting next to a young woman the other day who saw her father die on a big screen at the front of the courtroom.
Likely for the first time.
And she told me it was the first time she'd actually seen that. She knew how it had happened. She had been warned that the video was going to be hard to watch, and she was, you know, still taken aback. As you
Even
can
with
imagine.
years to prepare, you have to imagine that that's something you just couldn't handle. I mean, that would be unmanageable to watch.
Yeah, and this is such a demonstration of the technology that exists today. The cameras, the number of cameras and the quality of the cameras, it's no longer relying on eyewitnesses and chalk lines on the ground and tape measures. It's let's watch what happened. And a lot of it was horrifying.
It's better evidence, but terrifying.
And you think about the jury too. That's tough to watch.
Yeah, and this has been a very attentive jury. I mean,
was going to
lots of
ask
people
you, they've been
taking
really
notes,
focused.
Everybody focused. I have not seen anybody, you know, looking off, daydreaming, getting bored.
Yeah, the jury wasn't there today. You talked about they were preparing jury instructions. Talk about tomorrow.
So the jury's coming in early tomorrow, 8 a.m. The judge is going to read those jury instructions. They're anticipating that's going to take about 90 minutes. And then closing arguments. And each side gets 2.5 hours. The prosecution is going to use all of that 2.5 hours, it sounds like. The defense is probably not going to use all of that, but still, it's feeling like the closing arguments are going to go into the early afternoons. The judge told the jurors yesterday to be prepared not to get their lunch until 3 o'clock.
90 minutes sounds like a long time for jury instructions. Is there a reason for that we know of yet, or is that just the way they're budgeting their time?
There's 55 criminal counts. A number of them have multiple elements, so it might be 2 pages of law about, you know, on this charge you have to find this and this and this and this. And so there's one of those for every one of those 55 criminal charges, and then there are more than 30 what they call sentencing enhancers, which is if you've found him guilty of this, now you have to make a determination about these factors because it can increase the level of the sentence that would be handed down in a guilty verdict.
Kevin, thanks for covering the trial, bringing it to us, and we'll we will be interested in tomorrow's, what takes place in the Boulder courtroom tomorrow.
Yep.
Thanks again.